Welcome to Psych Inside, your one-stop channel for all things mind and behavior related. Today, we dive deep into the intricate world of relationships, specifically trauma bond relationships. A trauma bond relationship, a term coined by Dr. Patrick Carnes, is a connection between an abuser and the abused. It's a complex and often misunderstood concept, so let's take a moment to unravel its intricacies. When we think of a bond, we often think of a positive connection, a tie that brings us closer to someone else. But in the context of trauma, a bond takes on a darker hue. It becomes a chain, an anchor, a tether that keeps one person locked in a harmful cycle with another. This is the essence of a trauma bond. So what distinguishes a trauma bond from a healthy relationship? One of the most striking differences is the presence of a power imbalance. In a trauma bond, one individual holds the power, and they use this power to control and manipulate the other person. This leaves the person on the receiving end feeling powerless and trapped. Emotional manipulation is another key dynamic in a trauma bond. The person with the power uses tactics, such as gaslighting, where they make the other person question their reality and sanity. This manipulation can be so subtle and insidious that the person being manipulated may not even realize what's happening. They may believe they're in a normal relationship, and that the highs and lows they're experiencing are just part of love's roller coaster ride. In stark contrast, a healthy relationship is characterized by mutual respect, open communication, and a balance of power. The people involved feel loved, supported, and valued for who they are. They don't live in fear of the next emotional outburst or manipulation tactic. But here's the thing, trauma bonds don't form overnight. They're a result of a gradual process, one that often begins with love bombing, moves into a phase of devaluation, and ends with discard. Each stage serves to deepen the bond, making it harder for the person being abused to break free. Now that we understand what a trauma bond is, let's delve into the stages of a trauma bond relationship. The first stage of a trauma bond relationship is often called the love bombing phase. This phase is characterized by an outpouring of attention and affection. It's like being swept off your feet by a whirlwind romance. The person on the other end showers you with compliments, gifts, and seemingly endless admiration. It's a heady experience, intoxicating and exhilarating. But what's really happening beneath the surface? This excessive affection is not about true love. It's about creating a false sense of security. It's about making you feel special, unique, and utterly cherished. The purpose? To draw you in, to make you trust and depend on the person who's love bombing you. This stage is like the calm before the storm. It's a setup, a meticulously crafted stage to lay the groundwork for what's to come. So remember, while this stage may seem like an intense romance, it's actually a setup for the stages to come. The second stage, known as the devalue stage, is where the abuser begins to belittle and criticize the victim. This phase is marked by a drastic shift in the abuser's behavior, turning from the doting, affectionate person they seem to be in the initial love-bombing phase into a cold, critical figure. In the devalue stage, the abuser deploys emotional manipulation as their primary weapon. They may use tactics such as belittling, mocking, or criticizing the victim, often under the guise of joking or just being honest. The goal here is to chip away at the victim's self-esteem, making them feel small, insignificant, and unworthy. The abuser may also employ a psychological manipulation tactic known as gaslighting. This is when the abuser manipulates the victim into doubting their own perception, memory, or sanity. They might deny that certain events ever took place, or insist that the victim is remembering things incorrectly, making the victim question their own judgment and reality. While the abuser is busy weaving this web of confusion, they're also working on another front, the creation of self-doubt in the victim. The abuser might question the victim's decisions, opinions, or feelings, making them feel that they can't trust their own thoughts or instincts. The victim may begin to feel that they are the problem, that they are the one who is wrong or flawed. This self-doubt serves to further entrench the victim in the trauma bond, making it even harder for them to break free. The devalue stage is a calculated, manipulative tactic designed to make the victim feel worthless and dependent on the abuser. The abuser uses this stage to secure their control over the victim, making them feel that they can't survive or function without the abuser's guidance or help. By breaking down the victim's self-worth and self-confidence, the abuser ensures that the victim stays trapped in the trauma bond, too afraid and too unsure of themselves to leave. This stage is a manipulative tactic designed to make the victim feel worthless and dependent on the abuser. The third and final stage is the discard stage, where the abuser abandons the victim. This stage is a dramatic shift from the previous stages, and it's where the predator's true colors start to show. The discard stage is characterized by an abrupt withdrawal of attention and affection. The individual who once showered you with love and attention now becomes distant and cold. It's like a switch has been flipped, and the warm, caring person you thought you knew has vanished, replaced by someone indifferent and unfeeling. Another defining feature of the discard stage is blame shifting. The abuser, instead of taking responsibility for their actions, shifts the blame onto the victim. They might accuse the victim of being too needy, too sensitive, or too demanding. This blame shifting can be incredibly confusing and hurtful, as it makes the victim question their own perceptions and feelings. In the discard stage, the abuser also displays a complete disregard for the victim's feelings. They might ignore the victim's pleas for understanding or reconciliation, or they might belittle the victim's feelings and experiences. This lack of empathy is a key characteristic of the discard stage, and it's one of the most damaging aspects of the trauma bond relationship. The discard stage is often a cycle, with the abuser alternately drawing the victim in and then pushing them away. This push-pull dynamic can be incredibly confusing and destabilizing for the victim, leaving them feeling lost, anxious, and desperate for the abuser's approval and affection. The discard stage is not about the abuser losing interest or falling out of love. Instead, it's a deliberate tactic designed to control and manipulate the victim. The abuser uses the discard stage to keep the victim off balance, to make them feel worthless, and to make them believe that they are the problem, not the abuser. This stage leaves the victim feeling lost, confused, and still emotionally attached to the abuser. And this, tragically, is exactly what the abuser wants. A victim who is so broken down and confused that they continue to cling to the abuser even when they're being treated with contempt and indifference. The cycle of a trauma bond can be difficult to break, but it's not impossible. This statement rings true for many who have found themselves entwined in a trauma bond. But rest assured, there are ways to navigate this stormy sea. One of the first steps towards breaking free is seeking professional help. Therapists, counselors, and psychologists are trained to help you unravel the complex emotions and patterns that define a trauma bond. They can provide the tools and strategies needed to heal and move forward. Establishing a support network is another pivotal step. Surround yourself with people who understand your journey, who uplift you and encourage your progress. There's strength in numbers, and the collective power of positivity can be a beacon of hope in your journey towards freedom. Practicing self-care is equally important. It's not just about bubble baths and spa days, although those can certainly be part of it. Self-care is about fostering a healthy relationship with yourself. It involves setting boundaries, prioritizing your needs, and nurturing your mental, emotional, and physical well-being. Remember, breaking free from a trauma bond isn't a linear process. There will be ups and downs, setbacks, and breakthroughs, and that's okay. It's all part of the journey towards healing. Remember, you are not alone, and help is available. Breaking free from a trauma bond may seem daunting, but with the right tools, support, and a hefty dose of self-love, you can reclaim your life and your freedom. That wraps up our discussion on trauma bond relationships. We've journeyed through the perplexing stages of these toxic connections, from the intoxicating love-bombing phase, through the devaluing stage, and finally to the painful discard stage. Understanding these stages is crucial in identifying if you or someone you know may be tangled in a trauma bond. Remember, it's not just about knowing these stages, but also about taking the necessary steps to break free. Seeking professional help, maintaining a supportive network, and nurturing self-love and self-respect can be key in this process. The world of psychology is vast and full of intriguing concepts like trauma bonds. It's a realm that demands our curiosity and our compassion. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the mind. Don't forget to subscribe to Psych Inside for more insightful content.